welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at excerpts from A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens.
Oh, fantastic.
And we've got some really interesting fragments to work with here, so we're going to see what kind of hidden connections and patterns we can find.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, I think so. Before we jump into these excerpts, though, I think it's important to kind of set the stage. We're talking about 1775, a world on the brink of revolution.
Definitely a pivotal time in history.
What was that world like?
Well, imagine a world of stark contrasts, where the rumble of change is clashing with the weight of tradition, France and England in 1775. It's like a powder keg of social and political tension. You know, the seeds of revolution are being sown in even everyday life. It's full of uncertainty and fear.
Yeah, Dickens really throws us into the heart of it all, right from the start. I mean, those opening lines of A Tale of Two Cities, they're some of the most famous in literature.
Absolutely iconic.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. I mean, wow.
It's like Dickens is holding up a mirror to this society that's completely fractured, full of contradictions. You know, on one hand, you've got the established order, the monarchy clinging to power through this idea of divine, right? This belief that their authority comes straight from God.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you have these Enlightenment ideas taking root, questioning that authority, demanding change.
So it's a recipe for conflict, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure. And Dickens doesn't shy away from the danger lurking beneath the surface either.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the way he describes those travelers heading to Dover. All bundled up, faces hidden, terrified of encountering highwaymen.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the anxieties of the time.
Totally. It's not like some random plot device, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dickens is subtly reminding us that even something as simple as travel was risky back then.
Yeah, because of those highwaymen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That constant threat of violence, you know, underscores this lack of security, the distrust that permeated society. Nobody knew who to trust. Any encounter could turn deadly.
It's a scary thought. And then there's that description of the Dover mail guard. He's like practically armed to the teeth.
Oh, yeah.
A blunderbuss, pistols, cutlass.
Talk about being prepared.
Even Smith's tools and torches. This guy is ready for anything.
It's like he's expecting trouble around every corner.
Do you think Dickens is using him to kind of make a bigger point about this era?
Oh, absolutely. He's not exactly subtle about it, is he? The guard is like the embodiment of this prevailing anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? He's not some paranoid outlier. He represents how far people were willing to go to protect themselves in a world where danger could be lurking anywhere.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so we've got this backdrop of tension, uncertainty. Now we're introduced to a messenger, Jerry Cruncher. He gets this really curious message, recalled to life. This is our first glimpse of Dr. Manette, a man shrouded in mystery. What do you think about that phrase, recalled to life?
Well, it's key, isn't it? It works on so many levels. Like, on the surface, it refers to Dr. Manette, right? He's been in prison for years, and now he's being brought back into the world.
Right.
But it also works on a symbolic level, don't you think? It hints at this larger societal transformation that's about to happen.
Interesting.
France itself is on the verge of being recalled to life through revolution, shedding its old skin and becoming something new, though maybe just as troubled.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. And speaking of interesting characters, we then meet Mr. Lorry. He's like the embodiment of Tellson's bank.
The epitome of banking?
Right, with his brown suit, his precise wig, and just that whole air of banking, you know?
You can practically smell the money.
Right. We even overhear a snippet of a conversation about a doctor's wife who has suffered intensely.
Oh, mysterious.
It feels like Dickens is setting up a much larger story here, don't you think?
Oh, definitely, Mr. Lorry. He represents that old world order, reliable, unchanging. You know, a bastion of stability in a world that's teetering on the edge of chaos.
Right.
But the mention of the doctor's wife, it's like a crack in that facade.
Right.
It hints at some hidden tragedy, a story waiting to be unraveled. Makes you wonder how even institutions like Tellson's bank are going to be affected by the coming storm.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Then the excerpts, they take us to Saint Antoine, the poverty-stricken district of Paris.
Ah, the heart of the city.
And Dickens, He doesn't hold back in his portrayal of the misery there.
No, he doesn't.
Hunger, despair, and this chilling abundance of weapons. It feels like a powder keg about to explode.
It's palpable, isn't it, that sense of unrest?
Do you think this is where Dickens wants us to really feel the true cost of the revolution?
I think so, Santoine. It's not just a setting. It's a character in itself, representing those oppressed masses whose suffering is going to fuel the revolution. And that juxtaposition of weapons amid such poverty. It's striking, isn't it?
It really is.
It's as if Dickens is saying, look, these aren't just abstract political ideals being debated in salons. This is about survival. This is about desperation.
Right.
These weapons are a symbol of that simmering anger, the potential for violence that lies just beneath the surface.
It's a stark reminder that revolutions are rarely bloodless.
Never are.
So from the desperate streets of Saint Antoine, we're transported to the Defarge's wine shop.
A hub of activity.
Right, a hub of revolutionary activity. And there's this curious incident with spilled wine, a callous wine shop owner, and a character named Gaspard scrawling a message on the wall.
Lots of symbolism there.
Is Dickens hinting at something bigger, do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The spilled wine, it represents that disregard for the common people.
Right.
Right? It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the waste and indifference of the ruling class.
Right.
And Gaspard writing on the wall, it foreshadows those revolutionary messages that are going to spread throughout Paris, transforming public spaces into canvases for dissent.
So Dickens is saying the revolution won't be contained, it will spill over and leave its mark. Exactly. It's going to be impossible to ignore.
And then we finally meet Madame Defarge.
Ah, a formidable woman.
She's knitting, silently observing, and she commands this chilling kind of respect. It's clear she's a force to be reckoned with.
She's a woman of few words and immense power. What's your take on her character?
I'm not sure yet. She's so mysterious.
That's what makes her so fascinating, isn't it? Unlike her husband, who's much more vocal, she operates from the shadows. Her knitting needles are almost like weapons recording the names of those who will face the revolution's judgment.
It's a chilling image for sure. And in this charged atmosphere, we finally encounter Dr. Manette.
The man recalled to life.
But not as a doctor. He's a broken shoemaker. His voice a mere whisper, like a voice underground. What do you make of this reveal?
It's heartbreaking, isn't it, Dr. Manette's condition? It speaks to the human cost of oppression. He's a man broken by years of unjust imprisonment. His faint voice, it represents the silencing of dissent, the crushing weight of the old regime.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what he endured during all those years in prison. Absolutely. And how he'll navigate this world that's being recalled to life while he's still piecing together his own.
That's a powerful observation. And speaking of powerful, the next excerpt focuses on Dr. Manette making a shoe. A woman's shoe. It triggers this flicker of memory for him. A connection to a past he can't fully grasp. It's such a poignant detail.
It is. The shoe becomes a symbol of Dr. Manette's fragmented memory. He remembers the pattern even though he says he never saw the mode.
Right.
It suggests that some memories, some traumas are so deeply ingrained that they transcend time and circumstance.
Do you think more of his past will resurface as the revolution unfolds?
I think it's inevitable. The past has a way of catching up with us, doesn't it?
It seems like it. And now prepare yourself, because the next scene is incredibly moving. Dr. Manette's daughter arrives, and his response is just pure, unadulterated emotion.
A truly heartwarming moment.
She pleads, kiss me, oh my dear, and he embraces her, his cold white head mingling with her radiant hair.
Dickens is a master at capturing those raw human moments, isn't he?
He really is. This reunion, it's like a ray of hope amidst all the darkness. It speaks to the enduring power of love and family, the possibility of healing even in the face of immense suffering.
I agree. And that imagery of his white hair mingling with her radiant hair, it suggests a kind of rebirth, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next.
So maybe this reunion can heal the wounds of the past.
Perhaps. But the revolution is looming. It's a powerful force that could reopen old wounds.
I guess we'll have to keep diving to find out.
Indeed. Now the excerpts, they shift gears and take us to Tellson's Bank. Remember that bastion of tradition?
Oh, yeah.
It's described as old-fashioned and convenient, yet somehow it commands power and respect. It's almost like a character itself.
Definitely. So what do you think Dickens is trying to convey about Tellson's Bank?
I think it represents that stubborn resistance to change that characterizes the old order. It's like a microcosm of the aristocracy, refusing to acknowledge the winds of change that are about to sweep them away.
Do you think it will survive the revolution?
That's a good question. Time will tell, I suppose.
Okay. And speaking of surviving the storm, we're reintroduced to Jerry Cruncher, this time with his son. And we get a glimpse of his honest tradesman facade.
Right.
But then there are his rather peculiar nighttime fishing activities. It seems like there's more to this character than meets the eye.
Oh, definitely. There's always more than meets the eye with Dickens' characters, isn't there?
There really is. So the contrast between Jerry's daytime persona and his nighttime activities.
It adds another layer of intrigue, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
It suggests that even seemingly ordinary people have hidden depths, secrets that might be revealed as the story unfolds.
And those secrets, they often have a way of coming out at the most inconvenient times.
Yeah, especially during a revolution.
Yeah.
And there's this funny little detail, too, about young Jerry protesting his mother praying away his personal board.
Yes, the Battle of the Board.
And Mr. Cruncher's all like, well, I don't want to be made unlucky by his wife's prayers.
The irony, Dickens doesn't shy away from poking fun at his characters, even in serious situations. He finds humor in the everyday. It's part of what makes his writing so engaging.
It also reminds us that even during revolutions, people are still people with their own little quirks and struggles.
Exactly. Life goes on even amidst chaos.
Now, the excerpts take us to a courtroom drama. Charles Darnay is on trial for treason.
Ooh, high stakes.
The scene is tense, the stakes are high, and amidst the onlookers, we see Dr. Manette and his daughter, their faces reflecting the weight of the moment.
The revolution has touched their lives in a very personal way.
Yeah, and this courtroom scene, it introduces the theme of justice.
Right, a theme that's going to become increasingly complex as the revolution progresses.
How so?
Well, Darnay's trial represents the clash between the individual and the state, a conflict that's going to be magnified during the Reign of Terror.
So it makes you wonder how justice can even be served in a society that's on the verge of tearing itself apart.
Exactly. The very foundations of justice are being shaken.
And amidst the tension of the courtroom, another character makes a brief but impactful appearance. Sydney Carton, a lawyer who bears a striking resemblance to Darnay.
Ah, the doubles motif.
Dickens loves using doubles, doesn't he?
He does. It's a way for him to explore those complexities of human nature, the good and bad that exists within us all.
So how do you think these two similar yet different men will navigate the coming storm?
That's the question, isn't it? Are their fates somehow intertwined?
It feels like it. And the trial itself is a roller coaster. Witnesses come and go, testimonies clash, and the tension builds with every passing moment.
It's classic Dickens, keeping the reader on the edge of their seat.
But it's the appearance of this one witness who claims to have seen Darnay on a boat that really throws a wrench into things. And this witness, he describes Darnay's traveling companion as a man with very dark hair. It seems like such a tiny detail, but could it have larger significance?
Dickens is a master of foreshadowing. He wouldn't include a detail like that unless it was important.
Right, so it makes you question everything you thought you knew about Darnay.
Exactly. It plants a seed of doubt and makes you wonder if there are forces at work that we haven't even begun to grasp.
It's like Dickens is saying appearances can be deceiving and truth is often elusive.
A timeless message.
And then, just when things look bleak for Darnay, Mr. Stryber, his lawyer, he pulls this brilliant move.
What does he do?
He calls on Carton to stand beside Darnay, revealing their uncanny resemblance. The jury is stunned, and the case against Darnay starts to crumble.
It's a classic courtroom twist.
Right. It highlights the power of perception and how easily it can be manipulated.
And that visual similarity between Carton and Darnay, it reinforces the theme of duality, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like they're two versions of the same man.
One accused, the other free.
It makes you wonder if this resemblance will have consequences beyond the courtroom.
Oh, I'm sure it will. This is just the beginning.
Okay, so even though Darnay is acquitted, there's this lingering unease. Dr. Manette gives Darnay a strange look, a mix of relief and something else, something darker.
What do you think it means?
I don't know. It's unsettling.
It suggests a complicated relationship, doesn't it? Manette's long imprisonment has left him deeply scarred, and his reaction to Darnay hints at some unresolved issues.
Like what?
Perhaps a lingering resentment or fear. Maybe something from his past that we haven't uncovered yet.
Do you think his past trauma will resurface and impact his relationship with Darnay?
It's certainly a possibility. The past has a way of haunting us.
It's true. And now the excerpts shift to the aftermath of the trial.
Yeah.
There's a celebratory atmosphere, but Darnay himself is filled with turmoil.
Why is that?
He's haunted by his family history, the weight of his aristocratic lineage. It's a really interesting contrast.
It reflects Darnay's struggle with his own identity. He's been acquitted of treason, but he can't escape the legacy of his family name.
So is he defined by his bloodline or by his own choices?
That's the question he's grappling with.
Yep.
And with the revolution brewing, his aristocratic background makes him a target, regardless of his personal beliefs.
It seems like he can't outrun his past.
It's a shadow that looms over him.
Then we have this tense exchange between Darnay and Carton. Carton's drunk and bitter and questions why Darnay would even like someone who looks so much like him. It's like a loaded question.
It reveals a lot about Carton's state of mind, doesn't it? He's self-destructive and sees in Darnay a reflection of his own wasted potential.
So it's more about Carton's insecurities than about Darnay.
I think so. It's his resentment towards Darnay for representing everything he himself could have been.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Each reflecting the other's potential and shortcomings.
Then we get a glimpse of Mr. Stryver, Darnay's former lawyer, and his pompous personality. He takes all the credit for Darnay's acquittal, while Carton the Jackal did most of the actual work.
Stryver embodies that self-importance and ambition that often comes with power.
It's frustrating.
It is. He's more concerned with appearances and success than with actual justice.
And Carton, he's the one who actually did the work.
He's the brilliant but troubled mind working behind the scenes.
It makes you wonder if true justice can ever be achieved in a system that rewards those who take credit rather than those who do the real work.
A question for the ages.
And we learn that Stryver had proposed to Lucie, but was rejected. And his subsequent bitterness adds another layer to the story, highlighting those rigid class structures of the time and the sting of unrequited love.
Stryver's rejection by Lucie. It's more than just a romantic disappointment. It speaks to the unbridgeable gap between their social classes.
How so?
Well, Lucie, despite her modest upbringing, embodies a kind of moral purity that Stryver, with all his ambition and ruthlessness, can never attain.
So can love truly transcend societal barriers, or are those barriers too deeply ingrained to be overcome?
It's a question that Dickens explores throughout the novel.
Now hold on tight, because the excerpts take us on a whirlwind journey to 1789 and the storming of the Bastille.
The revolution has begun.
Dickens doesn't hold back in depicting the chaos, the fury, the cries of the prisoners echoing through the streets. It's a pivotal moment in history brought to life in vivid detail.
It's a visceral experience reading those passages. You can almost feel the energy of the mob, their anger, their desperation.
It's a reminder that revolutions, however noble their ideals are often messy and violent affairs.
They're a force of nature, unpredictable and often destructive.
And one image that's particularly chilling is the description of the grindstone being used to sharpen weapons.
Yes, a potent symbol of the violence at the heart of the revolution.
What do you think it represents?
I think it represents the transformation of ordinary people into instruments of violence. The sharpening of those blades signifies the sharpening of anger and resentment, the growing thirst for vengeance.
Which will fuel the reign of terror.
Precisely.
And we see this brutality firsthand in the execution of Foulon, a hated official who infamously suggested that starving people eat grass.
A callous and out-of-touch statement.
The mob, fueled by vengeance, they stuff his mouth with grass before killing him.
It's a grim spectacle, an example of mob justice and the dangers of unchecked revolutionary fervor.
His fate, it serves as a warning to anyone who dares to underestimate the people's rage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The revolution will not be mocked.
And amidst this chaos, Madame Defarge emerges as a key figure, her knitting needles clicking away, seemingly orchestrating the fates of those around her.
She's become the embodiment of the revolution's vengeful spirit, hasn't she?
Yeah, her quiet, calculating demeanor, it makes her all the more menacing.
She's a woman on a mission, and woe betide anyone who gets in her way.
Now, the excerpts focus on the revolution's impact on our characters. Darnay, driven by a sense of duty and a plea for help from Gabelle, his former servant, decides to return to Paris despite the obvious dangers.
It's a decision that could cost him his life.
It could. What do you think motivates him to go back?
I think it's a combination of factors. His inherent nobility, his complex relationship with his past.
So he's torn between his love for Lucie and a sense of responsibility.
Exactly. It's a classic dilemma between personal happiness and moral duty.
Can he reconcile his past with his present, or will the revolution force him to choose?
Only time will tell. And as Darnay travels, Dickens highlights the treacherous conditions in revolutionary France. He describes the law of the suspected, where anyone can be accused and imprisoned without any real evidence.
It's a chilling reminder of the arbitrary nature of justice during the revolution.
It shows how quickly the ideals of liberty and equality can be twisted into instruments of oppression.
And as we might expect, Darnay is captured.
Oh, no.
And ironically, the influence of Dr. Manette, who's now a revered figure in the revolution, initially helps Darnay, but ultimately leads to his imprisonment. It's a cruel twist of fate.
It highlights the unpredictable nature of revolution and how good intentions can backfire.
Right. So Manette's past suffering, which initially garners sympathy and protection for Garnet, ends up becoming a liability.
The past always has a way of resurfacing, doesn't it?
It seems like it in A Tale of Two Cities. So is anyone truly safe during a revolution?
It's a time of great uncertainty, where alliances can shift in an instant and suspicion can turn friend into foe.
Which leads us to one of the most pivotal moments in the story, Carton's self-sacrifice.
The ultimate act of love.
He's driven by his love for Lucie and hatches this daring plan to switch places with Darnay in prison.
It's a truly selfless act that redeems his otherwise wasted life.
It's amazing how Dickens takes a character like Carton, who starts off as this cynical drunkard,
Right.
and transforms him into a hero.
It speaks to the transformative power of love, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the potential for redemption that exists within us all.
So can true redemption only be achieved through sacrifice?
It's a question that has resonated throughout literature and history, and one that continues to fascinate us.
And it seems like in A Tale of Two Cities, the answer is a resounding yes.
At least for Sydney Carton. Carton's sacrifice. It's such a powerful moment, and it really underscores the themes of duality and redemption that Dickens is weaving throughout the story.
Oh, definitely. And I love how he uses those intimate moments of human connection to really kind of highlight the vast impact of the revolution.
Right. It's not just about the big historical events. It's about how those events shape individual lives.
Exactly. We're not just reading about the revolution. We're feeling it through the eyes of these characters.
It makes it so much more powerful that way.
Doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to what you said earlier about recalled to life, that phrase seems to have so many layers of meaning in this story.
Oh, it definitely does. On the surface, it refers to Dr. Manette's release from prison. But it also speaks to this potential for rebirth, for redemption that echoes throughout the story.
Right. And when I think about recalled to life, I keep coming back to Sydney Carton.
Interesting.
Why Carton?
Well, he's introduced as this kind of dissolute, cynical figure, but his love for Lucie completely transforms him.
It does. It gives him a purpose, a reason to believe in something bigger than himself.
Right. And his sacrifice, it's almost like a resurrection in itself.
It is. He sheds his old self, his cynicism, his despair, and embraces a higher purpose through this incredibly selfless act.
It's like he's being reborn into a better version of himself.
Exactly. And his final moments, as he's riding to the guillotine, his thoughts are not of fear, but of a future where Darnay's name will be made illustrious by his sacrifice.
It's such a powerful image. He's literally giving Darnay a new life.
He is, and ensuring a brighter future for Lucie and her family.
It's amazing. So Carton finds redemption through sacrifice, but he also helps others find redemption too.
Exactly. He becomes this catalyst for change, not just in his own life, but in the lives of those he loves.
So what do you think Dickens is trying to tell us about the power of sacrifice?
I think he's showing us that even in the face of death, even in the midst of revolution, there's always hope for redemption. And that sometimes the greatest act of love is to sacrifice oneself for the good of others.
That's a powerful message, and I think it's one that resonates with us even today, centuries after A Tale of Two Cities was written.
Absolutely. The themes of love, sacrifice, redemption, they're timeless.
They really are. So I guess the question now is, what does this all mean for us? The readers, the listeners who are diving deep into these excerpts, what's the takeaway? What's the lasting message?
That's a great question. I believe Dickens is urging us to recognize the power we each hold to make a difference, even in the face of overwhelming adversity.
Even in a world as chaotic as revolutionary France.
Exactly. Whether it's a grand act of self-sacrifice like Carton's, or those quiet, everyday acts of kindness and compassion that we see throughout the story, each choice has the potential to ripple outwards.
So it's not just about the big gestures, it's about the small things, too.
Right. The way we treat each other, the
Wow.
choices we make every day, they all have an impact.
So in a way, we're all being recalled to life through this story.
I think you're right. We're reminded of the importance of human connection, the enduring power of love, and the potential for transformation that exists within each of us.
And maybe that's the ultimate message of A Tale of Two Cities, that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for rebirth, for renewal, for being recalled to life.
Beautifully said. So much happens after Carton takes Darnay's place. It's hard to know where to even begin.
I know. We left off with Carton making that incredible sacrifice. But what about everybody else? How do they make out in this whole chaotic world of the revolution?
Well, Dickens doesn't forget about them. He shows us how the revolution impacts everyone,
Hmm.
even those who aren't right in the thick of things.
Right, right.
Take Tellson's Bank, for instance.
Oh, yeah. Tellson's what happens to them.
They actually managed to kind of navigate all the turmoil and become this lifeline for people trying to escape the revolution.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting, though, because even as they're helping people, they're still clinging to their old-fashioned ways.
So they're changing, but not really changing.
Exactly. They're a bridge between the old world and the new, a symbol of continuity amidst all the chaos.
That makes sense. And what about Mr. Laurie? How does he deal with revolutionary France?
Oh, Mr. Laurie.
Sure.
He really steps up. He's so resourceful and dependable. And he even puts his own safety on the line to help the Manettes and Darnay escape.
It's like he becomes a different person.
He does. He shows a different side of himself, a side that's brave and selfless.
So he's like a quiet hero.
Exactly. The kind of hero who doesn't need recognition or praise. He just does what needs to be done.
I like that. And don't forget about Miss Pross, Lucie's loyal companion.
Oh, how could we forget Miss Pross? She's a force to be reckoned with.
She's amazing, so protective of Lucie. And that scene where she confronts Madame Defarge, talk about intense.
It's a battle of wills. Two powerful women fighting for what they believe in.
And Miss Pross, she doesn't even hesitate to sacrifice her own hearing to protect Lucie.
It's a powerful moment. It shows the lengths people will go to for those they love.
It really does. And it brings us back to Carton and his final act of self-sacrifice. As he's riding to the guillotine, his thoughts are on Lucie and the future he's creating for her and her family.
He's found peace in those final moments. He's no longer defined by his past mistakes or his cynicism.
So his death isn't a tragedy.
No, not at all. It's a triumph. He's chosen to die for something greater than himself.
And that brings us back to that phrase, recalled to life. What does it really mean in this story?
You know, I think it's about more than just physical resurrection. I think it's about the possibility of transformation,
Yeah.
about finding meaning and purpose, even in the darkest of times. It's about recognizing that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, the human spirit can endure, can find hope, can be recalled to life.
Wow, that's really powerful. And I think that's a message that resonates with all of us.
I agree.
Mhm.
It's a reminder that we all have the potential for greatness within us.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into A Tale of Two Cities.
It's been a pleasure.
For those of you listening, would hope you've enjoyed this exploration of Dickens's masterpiece and that it sparks some new insights and questions. As always, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the world of knowledge and ideas.